Hi, so I'm here with my friend Mike Shook, and we haven't known each other very long, but I think Mike is a really fascinating guy that I just wanted to have the chance to share some of my own experiences talking to him and getting a little bit of a different perspective on pretty much whatever comes up. So before we do talk, I wanted to address a few things that will definitely be a little bit hairy in this conversation, but that's fine. I think that honestly the world's been pretty fucked up for a while because we haven't been willing to have these sort of difficult conversations, so I hope that we won't offend anybody too much, but if there's something that's offensive, that's not necessarily meaning that it's bad. It's good to talk about things that you don't necessarily understand or that make you a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to place some specific emphasis on a few things before we do get started. So we are going to talk a little bit about the topic of religion, which I know to some people is really touchy, but I want to be clear that whatever views that you express or I express about religion, that's just your opinion. I have my opinions, and everybody out there is also entitled to their own opinions. And we don't think that necessarily just because we believe something, you necessarily have to believe it, although obviously we care about the world being a good place, but just know that we're not saying this because we think that you are wrong or certain people are wrong. We're saying this because we want to have a conversation. And then next, I want to bring up some of the more interesting but also pretty dangerous topics that I think that come up when I talk to people about pretty difficult topics, and I think we've already talked about a little bit, but if we mention Adolf Hitler at any point during this conversation, just know it's not because we endorse Nazis, it's not because we endorse racism, it's not because of anything like that. It's just because I think the way that it probably will come up is that we talk a little bit, and already have talked a little bit, about the idea of what does it mean to love someone that is really difficult to love. And in my opinion, an extreme example of that I use quite often is what would it mean to be forgiving and maybe even Christ-like towards someone like Hitler, which I think is a really difficult and scary topic for a lot of people, but I just want to say that if we do mention that, it has nothing to do with us endorsing Nazis, not endorsing racism or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure you're on board with all that. Yeah, but other than that, I think we will talk a little bit about Jesus. I know that we've talked a little bit about him just as a person, and I wanted to sort of differentiate something from the start of this. Just that when we talk about Jesus, at least in the conversations we've already had, I think that we're talking about a person that we don't believe is a Messiah, which maybe, I mean, I don't know what your opinion is entirely, but personally, I'm not of the opinion that Jesus is the Messiah, and that's totally fine if that's your belief, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but truthfully, I'm trying to have a conversation about Jesus as an example of just a human being in the world that I believe we live in. And although that may be different for you, I really want to express that any comments that I make don't have to be things that you believe, and they don't have to be anything you even agree with. It's just a conversation. We will talk a little bit about racism, possibly. I know that race relations is a difficult topic, but both of us are trying to be as accepting as possible to anybody, and if race relations come up, it's not because either of us endorse racism. We are pretty fervently against it, but that may come up. Also, I just wanted to say that this is a conversation where we want to explore things, and that means that we need the freedom to say things that are wrong and to challenge each other a little bit, because that's how you move forward in a society. But that doesn't necessarily mean that our beliefs are the rules that we even live by. These aren't necessarily what we do every day in our lives, but this is just a conversation. So my big thing go ahead. So my big thing in life, and also what I'm trying to do on this channel, is to try and have honesty combined with compassion. Because I think if you have honesty and you're not compassionate, then you're condescending. And if you have compassion and you're not honest, then you're sort of not helping people in a way. And so I think it's important to have both of those things here on this channel. So if we have one without the other, it just won't work. So honesty and compassion are important. But with all that said, this is my friend Mike Shook. Nice to have you on. So yeah. So I just wanted to start off by asking if there's anything specifically you wanted to say about yourself, and we can talk about lots of different things, but is there anything specifically you wanted to start off by saying, or we can jump straight into questions if you want?
I have my own opinion toward everything, just like everybody does have their own opinion, and I'm not going to try to sway another person into making any kind of difficult decision that they may alter their life in the present and future.
Yeah.
And I like to believe that we are all individual, and we all have our own individual outlooks. Whatever you are ready to talk about, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think that with difficult topics like this, people get so passionate as they speak because these are really things that matter. You know, we're talking about the way that people maybe justify whether or not they should be alive. We're talking about the way that cultures have organized themselves for thousands of years. And so these are really emotional topics. And so it can feel like we're sort of telling people what's right and what's wrong, but this is, again, just a conversation, and whatever passions or emotions come up, that's our own, and like you said, individual. So the first question that I wanted to ask you about, and this is definitely pretty abstract, but I mean, that's where I'd like to go with this, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
Yeah, so what is the most beautiful thing that you've ever experienced?
The woman's body.
Say more.
The lusciousness, the curves, the passion it brings out of me, just to caress or feel that body.
Yeah. Does that mean, how does that relate to something like sexuality? Because I feel
it doesn't
something,
have to be sexual.
Yeah.
It could be just emotional, physical, without intercourse or whatever.
No, I think that is kind of, I very much so feel that, and I think there's something really interesting in really not just, and I think it's interesting that
the
you bring
things that female, that woman, the counterpart to us men, will make us do things that we normally would not do for ourselves. We'll do it for them.
Yeah.
And they make us reach deep down inside of ourselves.
Have you ever experienced something like that?
And pull out. Have I ever experienced what?
So you said that the female mind, the female body, this intense but beautiful other to man in some way seems to bring out something that you didn't necessarily know was in you. So have you ever had a sort of personal experience with anything like that? Sort of become more of yourself because of a woman or because of a person?
Yeah, woman has not ceased to motivate me. The passion they bring out in me is crazy. It's mind-boggling because I sometimes reach down in me and get to depths I didn't know I had.
Yeah, no, I've definitely felt that a lot, and I think that also that really speaks to the sort of pain that a lot of people feel, because I think in wanting those things, we more than anything sort of reach for those kinds of relationships and reach for this. I really do think that men tend to, and this isn't necessarily to speak for everybody, I know that everybody has their own opinions on what it is that brings out something in our biology, but just speaking as a man, I think that definitely, like, the times that I have been really down on myself, I have found that sort of love from a female that has really felt so different than anything I could experience with another guy. Like, anytime that I do talk to other men, although I get a sort of like pride and I get a sort of, the conversations tend to be more about, oh, like, are you doing well at this? Are you doing well in your job? Are you doing well in whatever? It's totally different, at least in my experience with women, that you get a sort of acceptance that goes beyond just accomplishment, and it goes into something like human acceptance. And I think that's something that actually men can learn a lot from women about, is just the sort of emotional sides of life, which, I mean, at least speaking from personal experience, I struggle with sort of the emotions of being a guy, and it is tough, but I definitely understand what you mean by saying that women bring that out of us in a way. So, just to move on a bit, this is a sort of vague question, and if you want me to be more specific, I can, but the question that I wanted to ask was, who are you?
Well, I am a person. I'm a human being like you. I'm a homeless man that has had a life that some have never experienced and some may never experience. Raised in a family, upper middle class white family, in a white neighborhood on the white side of town, and raised by pretty racist, biased parents that were hypocritical.
And about what time period would that have been? Because I know that racism has sort of like shifted in certain places over time, but when you say that you were in this racist community, is it still racist? Is it a place where you felt it at the time maybe, or is it, I'm just curious if that's all right.
Well, I was born in '73, so I don't know.
It definitely felt racist at the time.
I got disowned for having a black girlfriend.
Wow.
I got disowned for being a black girl, having a black girlfriend, so...
That's really difficult. So you didn't feel that sort of...
I didn't feel a difference between me and anybody of any different nationality, because I looked at me as the same as them, but just a different tribe of people. And I'm mixed and don't know what all I'm mixed with. But
do you have any more to say on that? If not, that's all right. I mean, that's definitely fascinating. I didn't know that, and it's okay that stuff like this is coming
just
up.
because I was raised in a prejudiced, racist kind of family doesn't mean I have to be.
Yeah. That's something I'd like to dig into a little bit more, if that's all right with you. Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, being a part of a community where you did feel that sort of racial tension, how do you think it was that you sort of grew into a person that didn't end up like that? Was there any specific experiences, or what do you think it was something else that other people went through that made them feel that way?
I have no idea. Ask that one more time.
Well, I know that we have this idea that racism is this simple problem. You know, and forgive me for maybe oversimplifying a complicated issue, but I think that sometimes...
But racism just isn't in whites. There's blacks and Hispanics and all other different races that are racist too.
Yeah.
It's just the whites get pointed out the worst as being the racist because they're blue-eyed like Hitler or whatever, and I don't know, it just, and being a white man with blue eyes, I'll get looked down upon by people that look like me, and I get looked down upon by a lot that don't look like me, and
that's a difficult topic. That's a really hard one because...
I don't like talking about it, but...
No, I know. And honestly, I'm glad that you brought that up because that's something that I struggle with and don't really talk about.
But people don't understand. I done 10 years in prison, and in that 10 years in prison, being a white man, even the white guards would try to take us white guys out.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about that? Or if that's too much, we don't have to go into that.
They would gamble on us fighting till death.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. That's something I wouldn't have even imagined. That, especially for people in a position of power.
Guards that housed us would gamble on us fighting to death.
Really? And so did you see that? Did they talk to y'all about that, or was
What
that
do you mean?
like? I know that. I'm just wondering, how did you know that was going on? And because I haven't been to prison,
Because
obviously.
while I was in there, it was we caught them, heard them.
Yeah.
They couldn't do nothing in there that we didn't know.
Yeah.
Just like we couldn't do anything in there without them knowing, pretty much.
Yeah, that's such an interesting relationship.
So it's
that I love
like
it.
we knew what they were doing as they knew what we was doing, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. And I know that I'm asking for like.
And
maybe
they
some
kept
stuff.
racial tension going.
Really?
They kept racial tension going.
Did they kind of encourage that?
Yes, they encouraged that.
Wow, that's really strange. I wonder if is
Because
there
the
anything that can be
majority
done
of the
about that?
guards was white.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you think there's anything that can be done about that? Anything that, and if you know,
I have no idea.
yeah, because one of the things I think about is once communities sort of get set up in this way, because this is something that I have heard from multiple people that in prison, racism is a really common problem because you have sort of people that protect each other, and that tends to break down by culture. And obviously, I'm not speaking from personal experience, but once you have a sort of stable system like that, it can be so difficult to create changes. And oddly, like, you get people that maybe are more comfortable with that situation than not comfortable with that situation. And so it's a really strange problem to want to work on. But thank you for sharing that. Is it okay if I ask you about any of that experience? No? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So I want to stick on that question, though, of who are you? Because I have known you for a short amount of time, and you have been one of the greatest people I've ever met. Genuinely. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit difficult. It's difficult to justify, because so often when we think about what does it mean to be a great person,
I am I have Tourette's sometimes. So I have outbursts. Sometimes I have outbursts.
that's okay. I understand. But what I mean to say is that people shouldn't be defined by their worst moments. I think people should be defined by their greatest moments.
Greatest moments, yeah.
And that's so difficult.
That's yeah.
It's difficult because
in today's society, no one wants to see another man be better than them.
yeah.
They don't want to see that. And have to answer to the woman they love or answer to their mom or dad. No man wants to see another man do better than they are. But that's not necessarily all the way the truth.
Yeah.
There is a other side to that where in reality, real men that know reality is you have to help one another in order to get better.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
it's like a job. You have to first put forth a work week in order to get a week's pay.
Yeah.
So you have to put something out there in order to get something back.
Yeah, and it can be so painful, especially because I think a lot of people sort of use their own suffering as a reason to not do better, to not do right by each other. And that can be so hard because we have these ideas about, oh, well, nobody understands what I'm going through. And I've definitely been guilty of this. And one of the things that for me lately has been incredibly powerful has been some of the friends that I've made. And really being willing to see them for more than just the difficulties in their lives. Because I've made friends with some people that have been through things that I would trade what I would go through what I've been through 1,000 times over just to not have to go through what they've been through. And you're one of those people, and I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy that you've had to suffer more than me, because I think you have. And although I know it can be, and personally I tend to not like the idea of comparing suffering, but I know that it can be really cathartic and it can be helpful when a person can tell you, you know, your suffering is fucking ridiculous. And Mike, your suffering has been fucking ridiculous. Is it okay if I share a little bit of like when I did get to first meet you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I did first meet Mike, and I don't want to go too much into it at this point because I really want to kind of focus on who you are, but I do think this is pretty indicative of who you are. I shook his hand, and Mike didn't say a word about that experience at the time, but after we got to talking a little bit longer, I for some reason felt as though I needed to shake his hand just to sort of show him that I am not above him. I wanted to just show it's a human gesture, and I think that so often people, and I apologize for using a word that I don't think defines you, but so often people look at a homeless person and say, oh, that's a different person. That's a different kind of person. And I don't think we have a word for that except maybe stereotyping, but that doesn't quite feel like enough. And so for me, human gestures like shaking hands or smiling or a hug, like those things just mean so much to a person that I think often doesn't get those things, which I think is one of the worst cruelties there is. But so I shook Mike's hand this second time, and when I did, you cringed. You cringed, and the reason he told me was because he had re-broken his hand recently as he fell off his bike. What were you doing, 35 or 40 miles an hour?
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Going downhill.
that's pretty fucking insane. You can tell me about the crash if you want to. Do you want to?
Yeah, I hit a man-made hole the size of a softball that was in the pavement on the sidewalk, where somebody could break their leg or whatever, but I wrecked my bike hitting that hole.
Man.
And thank God I didn't hit my head.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm really sorry about your hand, but I felt fucking awful. Like, and I know this is kind of just me monologuing a little bit, but genuinely, I felt awful that I couldn't even really shake your hand without hurting you. That's how much you've been through, you know? And one of the things that I hope does come out of this is I hope we can get you at least something for that hand. So without trying to be too pandery or anything, I do want to mention that one of the things that my girlfriend and I are hoping to do for you is we're trying to start a Kickstarter to try and raise some funds so that we can get you some money specifically for things that are going to help you, like maybe for fixing your hand up, for maybe getting you into rehab, maybe even if there's some way we can help you get a job, because I know that those sort of paths back to those good things is very difficult, especially from your position. And I don't know, I can't promise everything, but I really do hope that this could be something that can maybe move you closer to some of that. So just keep that in mind. At the end of this video, maybe I'll add something about those links. But for now, I just want to talk a little bit more. But so we were on the topic of who are you? And I don't think that you are a prisoner. I don't think that you're a homeless man. I don't think that you are a racist. I don't think that you are a white person. I don't think that you are a blue-eyed Hessian. I don't think you're any of those things. I think, actually, you're a very, very insightful person. And of the conversations that we've had so far, you have been really willing to talk and have nuance in the things that you say. And I think that's incredible because, no offense to my listeners, but most of y'all are assholes. I think most of the people out there really don't give the time of day to another person and don't really say things like, well, what did you mean by that when somebody pisses you off? And I'm sorry for calling people out, but at the same time, I'm not. I really believe that it's important to have a bit of recognition that, you know what? You're not right about everything. And I'm not right about everything, and you're not right about everything. Right. And we struggle. But there's an element of compassion that has to be there. We have to be willing to say, you know what, you're doing your best. You've suffered. You've gone through things. And because you've gone through things, and you chose to do things that maybe another person wouldn't have chosen to do. And I don't think that has to be the end of your story. I think that in a lot of ways is the very, very beginning. It takes a person messing up, and it takes a person not doing the right thing necessarily, sometimes at least, to figure out what the right thing to do is. So I want to ask, what are the sort of who do you feel you are? I think that there are a couple of ways this can be answered. I think some people care. Some people take care of others. I think some people produce. I think some people hold up morality, and they try to make right in the world. And I know that one of the things we talked about a bit is your father, and I know that he was a huge influence on you. And I was just wondering if there were maybe some of the things he taught you, really instilled in you. What are some of the things that you really value about people and about being a person and think are really important to being a good person? What do you think about that?
We're all a chain, and we're only as strong as our weakest link. And I value what
If you need me to, I know I'll kind of ramble, but if you need me to repeat anything, that's okay.
I value others' opinions probably more than I should. And I hold more stock in some of their opinions more than I should. But as a person that was raised in a middle white class family, an upper middle white class family, I didn't really want for nothing. Being the baby of 5, I didn't want for nothing really, because I was taught if I didn't have it, go out and get it. And I did just that.
And do you mind, and I know that this maybe can get into some tough stuff, so if at any point you do feel like you'd like to change, that's totally fine. But what do you think it was that you wanted when you were younger?
Comfort.
Comfort?
Comfort from, for everything, like comfort from a woman, comfort from life stresses, comfort from financial burden, comfort from all that, and that's, you have to work hard to get all that.
Yeah. So, do you mind if I ask what comfort looked like to you? And it can be good, bad, or not. If not, that's fine.
Comfort didn't look the same as it does today. Comfort to me then was material. Comfort today is more peace of mind. Being free and wanting better for others, because everybody profits when one person does better from being motivated from another person. Everybody in the community profits.
Yeah.
So it's not just a selfish thing, as people can label it selfish when it's not necessarily selfish.
Yeah. I like that.
It could be, but it very well could not be also.
I like that you brought up freedom, because I think that is a really important aspect of peace of mind, and I think freedom does deeply connect with the idea of community, in that when you have freedom but you look around you and you see everyone else enslaved to something, whether it's work or genuine slavery, which has happened in the past, I think you don't really feel free unless your brothers and sisters and friends and family are free as well.
That's right.
You know? So, anything else to say on that? No? Okay. So, and we can return to that, but I really do think that it's important that people ask the question and really wonder about the question in other people, and maybe especially people that you don't, maybe consider the person that you feel like you know the most about and wonder about who they are, because you don't know the answer, because they don't know the answer about you. And I think that's something that I've really taken away from getting to meet you, is that you are more family to me than even my family is, and that's a difficult thing to be true, but you know, if it's true, it's true, and I appreciate you for that. So we'll return to the question of who you are, and as maybe things come up, but I want to move on. So, and again, if any of these questions are things that you'd like to return to later, that's fine as well. But I'll give you a second since I'm gonna.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you sure?
Talk.
Okay. So I think it's important, like I said, that we look into what it means to consider who other people are in a more profound sense, because, well, let's just take an example that everyone can relate to. Hi, how are you doing? What do I mean when I say that? I'm not going to ask for a response to this second, but like, yeah. No, you go ahead. Is that something you want to ask me?
That's what I was asking you.
Oh, okay.
Don't read it out loud.
No, totally fine.
You see what it says?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. But what I wanted to say is just that, so when people say the question, hi, how are you doing? What the fuck do they mean? They don't mean how are you doing? Please tell me. What they mean is, dear God, please smile at me so I don't have to talk to you. And I think that is a really disgusting trait of one of the greatest countries that's ever existed, is this idea that we are so affluent, we are so prosperous, that we don't have enough time to stop on the side of the road and talk to somebody that literally has a sign up saying, I need help. And
Literally.
yeah, exactly. And when you really pay attention to the things that are important to you, you realize that's what you want more than anything. And I know that may be a little bit confusing to people, but how often have you been mad about that exact thing that I brought up, the question of, hi, how are you doing? And understanding that you always say okay, I always say okay, most people
When
always
we're
say
not doing okay.
no, we're not doing okay.
Yeah, and it's obvious we're
Yeah,
not doing okay.
exactly. But
we want other people to not get negative like we may be.
yeah, and we want to pretend together. We want this. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's alright, it's alright. We want this mutual lie where you're doing fine, I'm doing fine. As long as it's in front of each other, that's okay. But as soon as we go home, then we're alone. And we did never get that conversation. So the important thing to recognize is, how many times have you done that? How many times have you asked someone, hey, how are you doing? And you expected them to say, okay. And if they didn't, then you kind of got uncomfortable, or you sort of didn't really give them the space, or maybe you asked it as you were walking by that person, and that person responded and started to say something, and you were already 5 feet past them, and you have to do that uncomfortable sort of turn back and like walk backwards thing where you're like trying to get away, and you're like, oh, okay, fine, go away, please. So I think that's important, but I don't know. I think that is one kind thing that anyone can do, is just ask that question more seriously tomorrow. So, did you want to comment on that at all before I move on? No? Okay. So, the next question I want to ask you is, what is the most important thing that you think that people mostly don't understand about this world, in your opinion? And take a second on that one, because I know that's kind of a big question. And if you need me to rephrase or ask it a different way, that's fine too.
Yeah, rephrase.
So, do you think that the world is perfect?
No. No. Far from it.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be perfect. That's
Okay.
the funny thing. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to be it's not supposed to be perfect. There's
So what is it supposed to be?
Bad and good. Like, the world is what we make it as an individual, not what others see.
Yeah.
We see the world for what it is. We see the world for what it can be. We see the world for what it has been. We see the world for what tomorrow may be.
Yeah. And I think that so many people get caught up in the difficulties, the bad. And I'm not saying that as some sort of light thing. I understand why people get caught up in the bad and believe that is so much more real than the good, because at times, like, let's say one great thing happened to me today, and let's say one terrible thing happened to me today. The way I'm going to view today is that today was a horrible, horrible day because this terrible thing happened. But truth of the matter is, good things come and good things go. Bad things come and bad things go. And luckily, and maybe this is an unpopular and maybe somewhat morbid opinion, but I think that it's important to recognize that we go too. You know, we want to believe what's good is what happens to me that's good. And how could that be true if you won't even be here forever? And I haven't met anybody that's lived forever, but I don't think that living forever is the answer to that anyways. I think the answer is actually to find a way to live in that middle ground between good and bad. So I like what you...
I like that.
I like what you have to say also about this. So I'm just going to move on, and this is a little bit more touch one, so if you want we can come back to this one, or we can skip it all together, but I wanted to ask, and I know this is a hard question, but what is the worst thing that has ever happened to you?
I was abandoned. I was abandoned.
What does that mean?
My family left me because I was ignorant. Or they were ignorant. Which whichever one you want to say. Don't make a difference today.
Do you mind talking a bit about that? I know that's definitely difficult.
No, my family's seen only in a small picture of things. They didn't see a big picture.
Yeah. Was there...
Because they were stuck in old ways, where I was raised in a generation of Atari and Nintendo. So I was raised in a time where people learned how to be more flexible.
And I imagine it's got to be difficult coming from a time where, I mean, I was born in 1999, so...
No, I didn't want to be like my parents. They were not my dad so much, but my mom. Selfish, self-centered, egotistical, mean person.
Can you share any of those experiences with us? If not, that's all right as well. It's really up to you.
This is how ignorant my mother was. She called rock and roll music nigger music.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's
She didn't know, and I grew up listening to Eric Wright, Eazy-E, NWA, Snoop Dogg. I grew up listening to Dre. But my parents was not like other parents, and I was modern day slave, you could say.
Really, that's very rough. And I know that. And is it okay if well, you know what? I'll let you bring up whatever you want to. But I know that your family situation isn't necessarily like the best. But can you tell me a little bit about your dad?
He was in the Navy for 7 years and National Guard for 19 and a half. He worked at General Electric, retired from General Electric for 36 years. He got all kinds of bonuses. One of my nephews has got a lifetime fishing license in the state of Kansas because of General Electric. Giving my dad a Christmas bonus, and my dad giving it to my oldest nephew for a gift for a lifetime. He can fish in the state of Kansas for free.
That's really cool.
For his lifetime. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I was like,
it's so interesting.
It's like $40-some a year for a fishing license, and my oldest nephew don't have to pay ever.
Yeah. Is it okay if I talk about what you told me about him? So one of the things that I thought was really remarkable that you told me was how he served in the military. He for a long period of time he worked at General Electric doing I don't know exactly what it was he was doing, but that sounds like
jet engine aircraft maintenance and rebuilding. Rebuilding jet engines for carriers and planes.
Sounds like a hard-working guy, and that's something that I deeply respect.
He worked 2 shifts a day. His tree trimming business he did for first shift, and GE he did for second shift, and National Guard was the rest of the time, pretty much.
So
on the weekends.
So can you say a little bit more about that tree trimming business? Because that's kind of what I wanted to get into a little bit, because I know that's a really positive.
My dad used to do jobs not because he was trying to benefit, but because he was trying to help others out that needed help, needed his service, and he wasn't doing it for the money. Sometimes he had to take out of his own check to cover expenses for his tree trimming business because he tried to help others. So he only bid jobs for labor and costs of equipment.
So when you say bid jobs, that's like how much he would have expected them to pay, basically?
How much they would pay when he bid a job, and they would take it. He would go, even if the job required a lot more than what he thought, he would take it on the chin and come out of his own pocket.
I think
of
that's
his other job to cover expenses.
I think that's really a wonderful thing.
And my mom would get mad.
Really?
Yeah, she would get mad.
That's it can be so difficult sometimes with family because there are so many expectations around feeling like these are the people that are supposed to treat you the best, and oddly sometimes they even get mad at you for telling them that they're not treating you the way family should.
I had to pay my best friend to help me put 16 squares of shingles down on my brother's house because he started roofing it and the head of the nail gun blew off and hit him in the eye.
Oh my God.
Busted his eye open, so he couldn't, they had to go stitch and staple his eye back. And so he asked me to finish it for him, and I had to pay my best friend to come help me, and all they gave me and my friend was a Big Mac. Yeah,
that's messed up. That's so messed up.
Just tell me that ain't slave. Yeah, we got a Big Mac.
Yeah,
and I had to pay my friend out of my pocket.
Jeez, that's really rough. But you did it.
But I did it.
Why'd you do it? Why didn't you just stiff him? I mean, you got stiffed.
I don't know.
It's just kind of who you are.
Just who I am.
See, I think that goes a long way with people that listen, but I don't think that necessarily goes a long way on a job application or a piece of paper or stuff like that. And that's kind of why I wanted to be able to do this for you, because I've seen some really amazing things in you over the past day, and I at least want you to get a chance to show those things to other people. And I don't think you get that sitting on the side of the road. And I wish you did, and I wish that you could write your fucking story on a sign, hold it up to the world, and find your way that way, but I don't think that's working.
I mean, I came from Kansas in 2013, May 26th. I got off the Greyhound bus and I had $1,200 in my pocket or in my bag, and the next day I was told to go to Jesus Saves because I didn't have enough money for rent, and I didn't know that the expenses on rent was so high here.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have enough money. I thought I had enough money when I left Kansas City to come here, that I thought I'd had enough, but I didn't. So a guy that I met said, you know, go to Jesus Saves and you can stay there and save up your money and get a day labor job here, save up your money, and you can get you a place. And the second day I was at Jesus Saves, a guy asked me if I wanted to smoke a joint with him, and I forgot my bag inside. Well, I thought it would be safe. And I had my money, my ID, my birth certificate, my social security, all that in there.
Yeah.
Clothes, everything. And when I realized after the second, third hit of the joint that I left my stuff in there, I went back in to get it, and it was already gone.
Oh my goodness. How long do you think you were away from the bag?
Huh?
How long were you away from that bag? How long did it take before somebody took it?
15 minutes or 10 minutes. I realized that I didn't have it, so I went back in to get it, and it was gone. And I've been battling with people on the street stealing from me because it's just, I'm the easiest prey for them.
Why are you the easiest prey? If it's
because I'm on the streets too, just like them. That's why I'm the easiest prey, and I don't have nowhere to go hide my head and bury my head in the sand and say, "Oh, this ain't going on around me. This ain't going on around me."
Yeah, I think that's. I think we talked a bit about that. Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say that we talked a bit about how there are these sort of different worlds where some people don't end up paying attention to the worst parts of life because they have been in a good enough position for long enough that you can just sort of pretend that that's all there is, you know. And I've definitely been in that position for most of my life, just sort of feeling like, because I in full disclosure, I've been provided for by my parents really well and been incredibly fortunate in financial ways, in ways that are definitely, it sounds like you haven't been afforded at certain times in your life, but I've suffered in what I feel like are incredibly serious ways. Like, and I'm not going to go too much into this because I really want to keep the attention on you, but I do want to say that I have dealt with like suicidal thoughts, I've dealt with drug problems, I've dealt with lots of really difficult things, and they hurt really bad. And I can't put that into terms that maybe directly relate to the suffering you've had, or maybe people watching this have had, but I know that people suffer regardless of how bad they get it. And I think that it can be a really important and enlightening thing to take the time to pay attention to someone like you, to talk to someone like you. And that's hopefully going to happen through this video, is just get people to see some of the uglier sides of life just by talking to someone that maybe doesn't get a voice a lot of the time. You know, I think that I don't really know what it's like to live on the streets, and one of the things I never realized was how much theft can just make it impossible to move up out of that. And
impossible.
I wanted to ask if you could tell me a little bit about what it is like living like that, and if you can maybe even tell if there's any advice you have to people that may be on the edge of something like that, or if there's anything you want to say specifically about that. If not, that's okay too.
It don't make sense to steal from somebody that's suffering and has nothing anyway. And I don't know why a person would want to do it anymore. Myself, I grew out of that on top of being taught a very valuable lesson that my freedom really is my most valuable asset.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to do something to somebody that would be done to me.
Mm-hmm.
So even though things are done to me all the time, I don't mean I have to repay them with what I'm giving.
Yeah, and hopefully this can be a more constructive way to help you take those experiences and turn them into something that is repayment and not just cruelty, but repayment in a way that can really maybe even move you up, you know, towards things you want more than that. Is it okay if I move on from that? Yeah, okay. So, and thank you for sharing. I know that can be difficult, but let's see. So, is there any advice that you have for young people in this crazy time that we live in? And I'm not just speaking to the pandemic or to political tensions or anything like that, but just is there any advice that you have for the crazy times that we live in?
Invest your money. Not all of it, but invest your money in your offspring's individual retirement funds.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when your offspring becomes 18 or decides to go to college or decides to buy them a home,
Mm-hmm.
by 18 years old, they'll have enough money to do so.
Mm-hmm. I think that's actually very insightful. Anything else? That's right. Okay, so in your own words, why do you think we're here? And I mean that in a sort of very large sense, cosmic. And what does it mean that we're here, and why are we here?
I have no idea.
Nothing at all?
None at all. I
No.
have no idea.
That's alright. That's fine. We'll move on.
I think we're here to better each other,
Mhm.
to make better each other so we can evolve into an ultimate species. I don't know.
What?
My opinion.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas about what it means for us as a civilization to become something better? Like you said, an ultimate species, and I don't think you mean something so specific, but is there anything characteristic of that? Anything?
To believe that we're the only creation in all of the galaxies and stars. To believe we're the only creation would be naive or stupid. Just because the government doesn't show us scientific proof that there is other species doesn't mean that there isn't. And I would want my species, the human, to go further than others.
I agree with you. I totally see that, and I'm gonna impart some of like what I believe on this too, and I appreciate you being honest about your own beliefs. But I think that sort of one of the important things that humans have the ability to do, and we've talked a bit about this already, is humans are incredibly sensitive in ways that other animals aren't. We think about the future. We have the ability to use language, and we can, like, I think one of the things you said earlier was that we create. We're the only truly creative organisms on this planet. And in some sense, I think that means that we have a sort of responsibility to use that superpower for good. And one of the ways I think that works is we should not just be thinking about, oh, how do we preserve the environment so we can live longer? I think we should be trying to make the environment amazing, beautiful. We could literally, instead of building zoos, what if we built habitats? What if we went out into the woods to build things for animals to live in? And we built communities for animals that weren't just about, oh, let's keep them in a cage and stare at them. What if we used our ability to create to imagine what would help these other organisms live better lives as well? And I think that definitely makes sense to most people in terms of humans. Like, we definitely understand the idea of building shelters for other people and giving other people the resources they need, but we don't think about it in terms of animals. And I think that's strange. We build dams and we build artificial lakes and things, but why not build environments where trees grow more naturally, or where soil somehow works better? Like, all of these things seem to me in the grasp of science, and I think for some reason we don't have the motivation to do that. And did you want to comment on that at all? No? I know that you had an interesting point about how humans are incredibly sensitive in other ways than other organisms. But if you don't have anything to say on that, we can move on. Yeah. So, okay, I'm excited to hear what you have to say on this. What do you think the future of America looks like?
Great. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to speak on that because I don't know. I would like it to be great because I know that we have the most billionaires in the country, in the United States, that come from the United States. So, I don't know. I think it would be hard to defeat or even try to derail a country that is so great that they're one of the top consumers in all the world. So and as long as there's been brothers, there's been wars. As long as there's been neighbors, there's been wars. That's something that'll never stop. Be nice for it to stop.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is quit killing our homeless, because they're even motivating other people that some of us don't see. We may be motivating to other people just because we're having to reach down in ourselves and show an amount of courage that is amazing to other people that are so strong and so powerful in today's society because they have that they have them means, but we never know. Even homeless people's lives matter.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
No matter what nationality, creed, or race.
Yeah, I think that
Their life matters.
I think the important thing there is life, you know, and something we've been talking about a bit is the idea of sacrificing yourself for, like, the topic we talked about was like a person letting a starving animal eat them, and is that some sort of tragic thing to do, or is it a beautiful thing because it doesn't matter whether or not the person you're saving or the life force that you're saving is a human or a fly or a wolf or whatever. The thing that matters is that it's alive, and it's that life that gives it that value. I think maybe it's not such a horrible thing to kick a rock, but I think it's horrible to kick something that's alive. And I think that there's an understanding of mortality and death that comes into that as well, which requires some nuance to describe. But I really like what you're saying about how everyone's lives matter, and it's not about who you are, it's about that you are a person. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to skip that one just to go on to the next one. So let's see. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about the topic of love. So that word gets used in so many strange ways that are pretty difficult to like divide out. So I mean, we say that we make love, and we mean sex. We say that we love someone. We're like, oh, I love you, bro. And then we have I love yous, and we say that in weddings and crazy things like that. But what do you think it actually takes to love someone?
Heart,
Heart?
courage, compassion, understanding.
Do you think that people have a sort of incorrect view of love nowadays? 'Cause I'm
not going to speak on that because I can't speak for nobody but myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Have you ever loved someone?
Still do.
Still do. Yeah. How does that affect your life? Just having that in it.
It hurts.
Mm. I think that very often love takes a lot of suffering in a way. It's suffering for another person, suffering, and it's difficult. It definitely is difficult. But I think that part of why it hurts so much is because of how worth it is. And that, like we've mentioned a lot about how you can't have black without white, you can't have yin without yang, you can't have hate without love, you can't have pain without pleasure. And I think that it's, without you having to say too many words, it's plain to see that you clearly as anyone feel love, and you clearly as anyone feel all the emotions that everyone else feels. So I think that's one of the main things I wanted to convey with all this. Is there anything else that you have to say on that? If not, that's fine. But
can barely hold my eyes open.
No, that's fine. I want to just say thank you to everyone. This has been a difficult conversation at times, and I know that this definitely brings up some tough stuff for you, and I know you're going through a lot, but I hope that this will help some people see just how much you do need other people's help, and people like you need other people's help. And as much as I want to give you everything that I can, I'm only one person, and I'm hoping that by getting lots of people together to see this and to take an interest in someone like you and other people like you, that maybe we can help more people. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, so you just watched my interview with Mike Shook, and I wanted to sort of add this on at the end so that I could explain a little bit of what we're trying to do about this situation. So I obviously haven't known Mike very long, but I think that there are a couple of things that I can do for him by trying to make this video and trying to spread some of his message. But for me, it was really important that I not start my sort of exposition of him with a charity case, because I don't think that any human wants to feel that way. It can be difficult to accept help from other people, and I think really what I wanted more than anything with that video was just to show that he's a man, he's a human being, and there are plenty of people out there that get treated like they aren't all the time, and I think that's a tragedy worse than anything that's happened in his life. And so I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak from his heart, to speak honestly. But with that said, I do think that there are some things that I can do and that you can do so that we can try and help him. So the three biggest things that I think could be of tremendous effect on his life are one, trying to get him the resources that he needs so that he can pay to go to a rehab facility. And that's not necessarily something that he has expressed to me that he wants, but that is something that we can do for him if he's willing to. And I mean, that's a difficulty with all of this is any person that you want to help, they have to be willing to help themselves. But I do think that at the very least we can offer him the ability to see that the obstacles in his way are something that we can help break down for him, and money is definitely one of those things. So I'll be linking in the description a GoFundMe page for Mike that I've been setting up, and there's the first thing that I discuss on there that I want to try and help him with is try and get him into rehab. And I think that'll be somewhere in the price range of $5,000 to $20,000 for a 30-day inpatient rehab. And the biggest reason I think that's incredibly important is because it's not fair for anyone to have to go through withdrawals from opiate addiction alone. That's not something that I can genuinely feel comfortable with, just turning him back out into the world and saying, okay, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't feel right about that. But so that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I'd really like to help him with is I'd like to get him some medical care for his broken hand. His hand was broken before he had that bike accident, and that bike accident just made it a ton worse. And it's not right for him to have to suffer with that when I don't think he has to. I think that also is a big obstacle in trying to get a job, and of course drug addiction is a huge obstacle with that too. So I think that those are important obstacles to take out of his way if we can help him with, in order to try and help him at least have the possibility of having the future that he wants and clearly he's willing to work for. So I think that the last thing that I'd really like to try and help him do is, if I can, try and help him get some cosmetic surgery to get his teeth replaced, because I think everyone deserves to at least feel comfortable smiling, and he's missing his front teeth, which is difficult, and I know it can be embarrassing, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that's something that matters. At least I think it would mean a lot to him, and I don't have the money to do that stuff. I don't have no money, but I don't have tons of money, and I'm just one person. I'm really trying to do right by him, but also not overextend myself to the point that I feel like this is all on my shoulders, because I think it's important to recognize what you can and can't do in life, and I think this is one thing that I can get a lot of help from you and from anyone that you might know, and I think that this is something that's worth doing. So at the very least, I hope that you consider possibly giving some amount of money to the GoFundMe page and trying to help out Mike. And yeah, I care about people, and I think it's human life that matters. And if money is a problem for you, then I understand. You don't need to feel bad about not being able to give something if you can't give. But if you can give something, then I think you should. I think this is something that you won't regret paying for. And let's try and give Mike a chance. Thank you.